Hi all, it's Chris Thompson here from Property Portal Marketing. I am with the wonderful Simona, as always, joining me on these episodes. And we've also got, surprise, surprise, a couple of agents joining us and a lawyer as well. Mark Rawlings from Your Dream Home. We've got Gary from Murcia Services, and we have Paco from Cum Laude. We are also, I think, going to have somebody joining us as well in a couple of minutes. So, what are we talking about? Well, we are talking about the announcements that Prime Minister Sánchez came out and made about the awful plans or proposals that he thinks he's going to get through, which would mean that buyers, non-EU buyers of property and non-citizens would end up paying an extra 100% taxes on the property value. So I laugh because I obviously know what we're going to say. Is it hot air? Could it come through? What's going to happen? Now, of course, there is a serious point to this, which is that the British media have taken this by storm. And you've probably all seen the comments. You've probably all heard from your clients that they all think that the market is going to end and it's all going to fall by the wayside. But this is what we're here to discuss. So let's crack on. I think we should probably start with a legal point of view, from a legal perspective. It's the best way to start with these things. So Paco, a lot of hot air. Is it going to come through? What are we thinking?
Well, thank you, Chris. I think that it remains to be seen if that it ever takes shape, because the Prime Minister, he has a very weak parliamentary support. Literally yesterday, they got a major setback at the Parliament, getting quite a number of measures forward with the minimum wages, the RPI review of pensions. Everything got cancelled. They didn't get a majority vote. Okay. So as I was saying, it's very well making a grand announcement because he's feeling pressurized by polls and surveys because affordable dwelling is of public interest in Spain, but making it as far as to passing an act whereby such a dangerous tax is passed is quite a horse of another color. Yeah. So I think in the first place that it will be difficult for them to get the majority vote in the Parliament, and time-wise, I don't think that this will be a measure that would be around in the short term, because this new alleged tax could come to life with two parliamentary procedures. Okay, one is a proper bill that goes through all the parliamentary stages. If that were the case, we wouldn't have if they happen to have the parliamentary support. Okay, but I don't think that the act would come to life in less than 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And if it ever came to life, then most likely it would come into effect January 2026 at the earliest. Okay, but the second,
do you even think that it's ever going to get passed? I mean, let's just jump over to Mark here. Mark, obviously you've been in the industry a heck of a long time, right? Now, of the stats that I've seen, there were 27,000 buyers, right? And I think, foreign buyers in Spain last year. That might actually have been Brits. I need to check up on that. But 27,000 buyers of property. That's a heck of a lot of people that will essentially turn around and go, yeah, we're not buying. I mean, do you actually think that this is going to get passed?
His alleged figures are that 27,000 people have bought to profit. and not to use them as holiday homes or whatever. So what he's actually saying is 27,000 people, non-EU citizens, have bought to profit. Well, I would love to know where they're going to make so much profit from, because I'll be investing personally. So let's get this, to buy a property in Spain and to sell a property in Spain in a short period of time, you have costs of around about 20-25%. So the market is great. The market is moving, but it's not moving at such a figure that people are making this amount of money. So he's grasping at straws to try and ease a problem that he has. And you have to remember that. So I don't really think he's going to, you know, as agents, we need to remember where we are and what we're selling. You know, it's a great market to invest in for quality of life, for lifestyle, for weather and everything else. I wouldn't listen. You're not going to, in my opinion, you know, you're not going to lose money in the Spanish property market, but you're not going to come into the Spanish market and start making 30-40%, which he's saying that people are doing. So I don't think that market exists. As far as what he needs to do is obviously social housing, which we don't have. We have a shortage of. But that's a different conversation. Again, I think, like you, Paco, you know, for him to get this through, you have to remember it's not. What he's done very sillily is he's attacked the tax on resale properties. What he could have done quite easily, and he's in control of, is increased VAT. So he could have increased either on new build properties, if I'm correct, which he didn't need then to get approval from the regional governments to get the likes of Andalusia to increase from 7 to 14%. Then he needs to get the approval of the Andalusian government. It's not just his decision to make. So he's an awful long way about. He's got some serious problems within his party. He's got his own party who are certainly his older generation party turning against him. So I think he's grasping at lots of straws to try and to take some of the problems away from him, which I don't think it's going to deflect and take it away from him, to be fair.
Gary, obviously being in the market yourself as well, you will see how people have reacted to this. And funnily enough, I was talking to my wife yesterday about this, and we both came up with the same point, which is people read headlines. Yeah. And then they have a knee-jerk reaction to headlines. What they don't do, unfortunately, is read through the actual statements and the facts.
Unfortunately, Chris, and I think the problem is with people in the UK, as much as we tend to slaughter them, that people do believe what that Daily Mail headline says, and that Sun headline,
good old Mail,
and the Mirror.
You have to admit, sorry guys, you have to admit, from a marketing point of view, they are doing their job great. So they are putting out
big
titles with hooks, like proper hooks to like create panic and to create that feeling like I have to, like, what am I gonna do now? And yeah,
Harry,
they are not.
You do a great job marketing. 100%. I think they do, but Chris has asked that question there. I've seen a downturn over the last week. We spoke to a hell of a lot of people. I think the first day or two that it was actually proposed, then a number of people that on our database have come to us. A number of people that walked into the business have mentioned it, and I've seen a downturn on UK leads coming through over the last week or so. I think in some cases the agents don't help themselves by obviously continually bringing this up and advertising the fact. I see some lawyers that had heard this news 2 weeks ago or a week, whatever it was, and actually putting their advert out last night, which is 2 weeks too late because everybody knows about it basically. So I think we need to really find out the facts and how it goes forward without trying to worry people too much.
Iain is joining us.
Hello.
Okay. Hello. Hi. You all right? Hiya. Oh, hang on a minute. There we are.
You're right.
We're straight into the recording, Iain. So just join in when you can. No problem.
Yes.
From a.
We just had a bit of a sale this morning, so can't complain.
It's okay. No problem. Paco, from a legal perspective, in terms of what I read into this, right, is two things really. Maybe it's a two-parter question, but let's cover the first part. From what I understand, in Spain, it's the regional governments that look after real estate tax and property, right? So
Correct.
even if the situation does come about where Sanchez decides to, put a tax into place or increase taxes over here or increase taxes over there,
Sure.
surely those regional governments can decide whether to adopt it or not. Paco, what's the legal aspect on that?
Yeah, that's to some extent true. It is the regional governments that have broad powers to establish tax rates and also tax benefits for property purchases. But it is also true that the central government, namely the Prime Minister, they can establish minimum and maximum tax rates. Yeah. So, and that's happened with the wealth tax. So there were some regional governments that have decided to establish basically a zero tax rate for wealth tax. And because the government thought that there was unfair competition between regions, then what they did was to establish a minimum rate below which the regional government could not just establish a lower rate. So I guess that, following your question, even if this came to the very, very worst, we could find regions that would make it more attractive for foreign buyers to buy in their own regions. Yeah, because they would have some powers to alleviate the tax burden that may be brought about by the government.
Okay, Mark, given that this really only applies to non-EU, obviously, yes, your market does cover the British market and obviously covers the European market as well. Do you think you're going to have to change your marketing strategy this year, or do you think it's just going to continue as normal? I mean, what is your view, given that you're on the ground talking to people?
Listen, I started the business when we had the financial crisis, and everybody, the British, were selling because they needed to get their money out, and they got properties that they'd got 100+% finance on. I then went through an ash cloud, then we went through polarity of the pound, then we went through this thing called Brexit, and people thought that Europe was going to fall off the edge of a cliff and the British would have to get they was going to have to get rescued by the military to get out of Spain. I think it's just another thing that an obstacle we've got to come across. We've got this year we've got lots of shows planned, we've got lots of marketing planned, private shows planned. For us, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. I think again we need to educate our clients. Listen, it puts some sense of urgency for the clients. At the end of the day, this isn't going to happen tomorrow. If it ever happens, it's not going to happen this year, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a politician, but I don't see it. It's not physically possible to happen this year. So it's definitely not going to happen in the next 6 months. And the chances of it happening and getting through again, I think, are quite slim. So I think for us, it's business as usual. And yes, we've got people who have already been saying, okay, what's happening? What's the situation? I think probably we've had more concerns over people who's buying off plan. So we've got, like for instance, we've got a development which we're promoting. We've got we're the developers of. And we've got people on there saying, okay, fine, listen, on our contract states this, we want to include in, if this does happen, then there's a get out clause for it, because obviously somebody committing to a 500,000 villa now and they're paying 7-10% tax, that's going to increase to 20% or 14%. So obviously there's a difference. So I think, or if the VAT changes, obviously, I think, again, we just need to listen. For me, as I say, I think it's business as normal and nothing's changed, to be honest. I don't think it's going to. The British love headlines. We all love headlines, and we all love the press. And of course, it's heavily in the press. The Spanish government's going to charge the English 100% more tax. Well, it's comes in. They're going to send you a 200,000. People were saying to me, so a 200,000 pound property is going to cost me 400,000. No, instead of you paying 7%, you're going to pay 14%, or instead of you paying 8%, you're going to pay 16%. So it's not 100% increase. It's 100% increase in the tax. So there's plenty of countries in the world that you have to pay more than 10% purchase tax on. So it's not doesn't mean the Spanish market is dead for the British client. Far from it.
I think what's frustrating is that we all know the situation. We know it's going to be very hard for the Spanish government to get that through, and we know we are able to give clarity. But I find it very frustrating that the Spanish government haven't come out and clarified Sanchez's comments.
Just to know what the tourism minister's saying and these different people, because ultimately,
it would be, and of course, from a buyer's point of view, of course, agents are going to say that we're biased. We want you to buy property in Spain. Of course, we're going to say what our feelings are. But of course, everyone goes back to that same headline. At least if the Spanish government or somebody, tourism minister for tourism, came out and said, actually, no, these are what we meant by this, it would clarify the whole situation. I mean, Iain, welcome to the conversation. What are your thoughts on this? Why isn't it that anyone has clarified this situation?
Okay. Well, firstly, we've just sold a big property today.
Well done.
2 UK people. And the fact is, I just said, look, what about all the... We're so used to hearing about different bits and pieces that are going from Spain and their relevant governments. And frankly, I think everyone just thinks it's a bit of a laugh. It's a minority government. Half the people in Parliament dislike the minority government. It's a bit like the UK government. You're going to get nothing through unless you've got a majority. Everyone's going to be objecting. And frankly, the fact that you're absolutely right, who said, it's a regional thing. It's not a government thing. If the government take that money, then the regional people aren't going to benefit. And so, frankly, it's just hot air. And it's clear that somebody has decided that he needs to get on the front foot politically and start getting his name in lights, because the other parts he's hoping will go with him, but they won't.
Yeah, there does seem to be some opposition that has come through already, and I think, Paco, I'm probably right here in thinking that the reason that he came out with it was because the opposition party put forward their proposals first.
That's right.
I mean, it's exactly the same as the UK. Good old Keir Starmer has made a load of broken promises and then comes into Parliament and look what happens. So I think that was he probably felt he had to put forward his own proposals.
That's right. That's what's happening here. What it is just political manoeuvring. And obviously, the UK market is about 9-10% of the market in Spain, but it's all based down the south coast and along the coastline, really. And a lot of these problems are based in the cities. I was with a developer yesterday that was actually had 20% of his houses were for locals. So I don't know whether this is something new now that they are realizing that maybe they've got to do something. But it certainly is. That was working in this particular case. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. Unfortunately, they're not going to yield the same amount as a total development, but actually they probably are sorting the problem out themselves, which is fantastic.
I think also, Chris, if you look at this area, and if you go back 4, 5, 6 years ago, Las Terrazas, there was massive. We were talking about this yesterday. A massive amount of new, bank repossessions down there. There's been bank repossessions on the Torre. Now, the affluent Spanish, a number of those purchased those properties as investment properties. If you look at the actual sales we made, very, very few young Spanish purchased those properties. They couldn't have been cheaper. They were 50, 60 grand, 2-bed apartments on Las Terrazas. They went to the Dutch, they went to the English cash buyers bank. There was not the interest from the young Spanish.
No.
And that's not going to change. You drop all the prices down, that ain't going to change. It's not in their mentality. It's a completely different culture.
Yeah, I was going to go into that actually, into more of a property price sort of point of view. But my view on this whole mass tourism thing, because effectively this is why these rules and regulations have come out. Surely there's better ways to deal with that, and anyone can jump in here. But surely there's better ways to deal with that. I mean, people have been buying houses for a couple of 100 years at least, right? And mass tourism has never been an issue. And okay, yes, I admit, over the last sort of 15, 20 years, travel has become a lot easier. And of course, people want to travel a hell of a lot more. But by making these comments, is Sanchez really saying that people buying property is causing the issue? For me, it's not. For me, the issue is not being caused by people buying property. The issue is being caused by what happens with the property once they've bought it. I mean, for me personally, I blame Airbnb. Airbnb is the problem for me. But
unfortunately, none of us are advisors to the government, so we're not going to change any of what the logic says. We can, it'd be lovely to have a meeting and sit in front of Sanchez and call him the idiot that he is, and the effects that ultimately he's talking 100% rubbish, and it's not going to change anything. We all know that. The reality is, what's he going to do for us, and what's he going to do for us for non-EU clients? And it's not just the case that we've got lots of American clients, Canadian clients, not just particularly the British client.
Exactly.
Everybody who's ex-EU, who's not EU. Obviously, the golden visa and things have gone. I think as far as the marketplace is concerned, what we've got to remember is the market is still very strong. It's still a seller's market. The people still want to come here for their quality of life. Since obviously the pandemic, people can now work remotely, and more people are doing that. So ultimately, our clients need to continue their search. Maybe it's a bit like Brexit. When Brexit happened, everybody sat on the fence for 2 years and said, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? Are we still going to be allowed to go to Spain and buy a property in Spain?" January came as a business. Our business doubled. Our sales doubled. Our business totally doubled for January and February. And then, unfortunately, Friday the 13th came in March, and we came to a hurdle we had to get over. And I think, again, nothing is going to change. If we've got British clients now and they're looking at buying, they need to buy now. It doesn't matter if it's in the next week, month, 6 weeks, 6 months.
We're experiencing this problem in the UK, aren't we? If you go in the southwest country, Devon and Cornwall, they've got the same problem. They've got all the Londoners and the fairly wealthy people buying up properties there, and the people who live there, the kids, can't buy homes because they're way above what their lending sort of criteria would allow them to get a property. But it is the way it is, and it's really, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, geared and focused mainly on the cities and not in what I call the tourist industry areas. And you can go down to certain parts of the tourist and you can go and rent a house for €500 a month.
I think
if these students and people are upset, then they're not going to buy at that stage anyway, because they probably can't afford it. And when they can afford it, they're going to have to build some cash funds up to buy. And there are properties around that you can get at a reasonably good level, which are mortgageable.
I think the other part is, Ian, exactly what you're saying there. You're 100% right. We've got Dutch and Belgium agents that work for us, and they're saying exactly the same in Antwerp, Amsterdam, and I guarantee it'll be the same in Munich, any major cities. Absolutely. So I don't know if your view on that, Paco, is it in Spanish, then you can.
Yeah. I think so. I think that this is not proper measure to solve the problem that Spanish people have. Okay, I don't think this is the solution, because in the end, Spanish people would not buy frontline villas worth $500,000, or in very touristic places. So I don't think that perking up the taxes for purchases would solve the problem in itself. But if I am allowed to just bring up a cushion to anyone being really, really concerned of this ever happening, if the worst comes to the worst, okay, that there is a way around this tax hike, which is very easy, which is for that foreign buyer to set up a company, a Spanish company, because the moment that the Spanish company buys the property, then it would not be affected by this increased tax. Right. So, and setting up a company for the sole purpose of holding the asset doesn't bring about too much expenses, or because you simply have to pay an accountant to keep it alive and to pay the quarterly tax filings and all that stuff. Because this tax, if it ever happens, because of EU constrictions and whatever, that can only be applicable to non-EU buyers, right? So the moment a Spanish company, a limited company, buys the asset, no matter who the shareholder is, then the tax would not be applicable.
And what are the implications? I mean, surely there's some implications. Surely there's some implications with that, though, with a private individual buying an asset under a Spanish company, with the Spanish company then owning the asset. Are there there's no legal limitations on that?
No substantial differences, really. Actually, from the point of view of a Briton, he would be much better off having a Spanish company, because you say if they should put the property into rentals, buying as an individual means that they would have to pay 24% on the gross income. Yeah, that's the taxation for a Briton, for an American. Whilst if it were a Spanish company, then it's only 19% on the net income. So you have allowances for all the expenses. Okay,
exactly.
And the tax that the non-EU have to pay is 24% regardless, isn't it? Regardless of whether that property is rented out or not. Is that the case? It's 24%?
Well, the difference is that if there is no rental at all, then there is like a nominal or alleged rental being allocated to the property, but it's quite minimal. That's not really a problem. But answering your question, the basic difference between buying individually or through a company is that you have to keep you have to pay some holding costs for keeping the company alive. You have to pay an accountant that would charge you a quarterly fee, which is very manageable to keep the company alive and to so that it is by the book. But the company itself would be really, really easy to handle, because even if it is only asset owning without not exploitation of getting rental,
no income,
no income. So and that venue has been used by some non-EU buyers in the past, regardless of this grand announcement, because people from Scandinavia, like Iceland and even Norway, if they buy individually, they may have problems raising finance in Spain, because Spanish banks wouldn't want the loan to be repaid in a foreign currency, because of fluctuations. So some people from Iceland, what they do is that they simply set up a company in Spain, and that's really hassle-free. So I would just give some glimmer of hope. That
I think based on the conversations we've had, there's more than a glimmer of hope.
Well, no, I mean, even if we were facing doomsday, I think that there is an easy way around. Because even if they set up a tax avoidance rule whereby if there is only one shareholder who is non-EU, then the tax would apply, it would be easy to get around that, because you take the couple. At the moment there is a couple setting up a company, then who the shareholders are is not visible in the company's house. So my point is that there would be some means to even get around this tax, and it would not be tax fraud. It would be tax planning. It would be
good.
Tax planning.
Good, excellent. And just talking briefly on the market situation. I mean, I think that, Mark, you made some great points. The British love affair with Spain is not going to stop. Let's be honest, right? And of course, it's the same with the Americans. The American market is going to be huge this year as well. And this, Sanchez's comments would really only apply to non-residents, right? Now, for all intents and purposes, I think that this year and probably next year as well, you're going to see more people buying for the purposes of moving to Spain rather than the purposes of buying a holiday home. I mean, is that the trend that you guys see as well, or am I talking, or am I,
Well, you can only talk about the again the politics in the UK and the amount of people that say I just want to get out of this country, which is a process. Americans the same. We've got a new president of America, and I want to leave this place, and really a lot of it is a bit emotional. But there are people who are really. We have a lot of clients that are looking to come out to Spain. And they're looking at the logistics and they're looking at ways how it can work. But, with the remote working these days, you can work from anywhere in the world with just a laptop and a phone. It's easy now. So, and here I am sitting
Good
here.
internet, Iain, don't forget.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. But but it's true. We're 25 degrees here where I am right now. In England, what is it, 4?
Probably.
There's an argument for you. We are in January.
And they've got that another one of those named wins coming this weekend. I think that's it.
Yeah, we have another one coming. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know which one that is, but
yeah.
What's your view on that, Mark? What's the trend that you're seeing? Because obviously, being quite a big company yourselves, you cover a wide range of areas. You're doing all these
different
shows,
areas, different things. If I take, for instance, the Canaries, we get a lot of people who do buy as a rental investment. So of course, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to get rental touristic licenses. The Costa Blanca, Murcia, we see more people with permanent moves. I think that's down to the price of properties. Costa del Sol is a mixture. We do get people obviously changing and making it their full-time residents, but I think a lot of people do come backwards and forwards, especially international clients, Americans and things. As I say, it's the lifestyle and everything else we're selling, isn't it? I don't see it going anywhere. I don't see it taking any pace. I think I had a conversation with a place in the sun regarding it, and obviously we've got events coming up. We've got a private show coming up. Am I concerned about tickets numbers and different things? I think in a couple of weeks' time, I think the whole thing will have blown over to a degree. The English press would have moved on to something else. Somebody else would have been murdered, or somebody else would have been some different thing, and it would have totally changed. It's already left the headlines, hasn't it? It will stay with the Daily Mail.
Yes, it's gone.
It's no different to whatever. I think and I don't really see. Sanchez again has got so much politically going on in his own back garden, and he's got to divert that attention away from him, which he's trying to do. He's got problems with his wife, he's got problems with all different things. So again, but ultimately he's made a government of people he's taken out of prison, people from ETA, people from all over the place. So I don't think he's going to get too much support, to be fair.
No, and that is the problem. And the reality is, Spain sells itself.
It's something we've got to overcome, Iain, isn't it? And we will overcome it.
It's everything that everyone throws at Spain or buyers in Spain, whether they're British, American. It won't stop them, other than something like COVID, which will never, probably, hopefully, ever happen again. But really,
COVID didn't stop people, did it? COVID motivated it. You look at it. Let's look at it. They stopped the golden visa. He started that process last year, and it's coming into force, I think, on the 4th of April. So that took him around about. Paco will confirm the exact dates, but say that took him 5-6 months to get to anywhere. So if this actually ever came into it, we're a minimum of 6 months away before it could even happen. Well, bearing in mind we're coming into February now. Less than that. We're coming up to July. Spain stops politically until September. So nothing is going to happen this year. So ultimately, this year our focus for clients is the market is still moving, it's still increasing. So you need to be buying now rather than waiting a year. And if you wait a year, there is a chance that it could happen. Your tax could be more. Likewise, in the pandemic, in the financial crisis in Andalusia, we got a reduction to 4% tax by the Andalusian government. It wasn't the national government that voted to do that. It was the Andalusian government that said, listen, we need to get the market moving. Let's reduce from 8% to 4%. And that's what they did. And so, as I say, ultimately the different regions, especially the community the Valencia of Andalusia, they need Murcia, they need the foreign investment, so they're not going to be voting for that in any shape, way, or form.
I mean, I did some calculations on it last night, and I mean, 27,000 buyers at the percentage of what they pay on tax. I mean, you're talking hundreds of millions of euros. Yeah. It's not cheap. It's not a couple of piddly 20 euro notes here and there. It's hundreds of millions of euros. I don't believe for 1 second that those local governments are going to turn their noses up at that. So
no. Well, you've got
Gary,
you've got developments going on right now that are going to be finishing in 18 months' time, maybe. So the developers are going to get beaten up. They're not going to have that. It's just not going to happen. And I mean, I laugh and I'm happy that these things come out, because actually, I think Mark, Gary, and myself will probably benefit from it, because it's brought something to the front which we can use.
I was just about to say that, Iain.
I don't think we
what it's also done, it's also, because everyone loves a Brit, don't they? The French love the British, the Germans love the British, the Irish love the British.
It's just that we don't love them back.
It's actually highlighted, and it's created more of an interest for those guys as well. So all in total.
Right now, so I'm sorry to butt in here, but I'm going to have to go.
Okay.
I've just been given a big thing, so I'm going to have to go, everybody. So
Iain, thanks for joining us.
Simona, I'm sorry I screwed up to begin with, but I was in a meeting, so I've done my best. But honestly, I'll give you a leaving thing, and that is, it's not going to happen. All right.
Okay. Cheers, Iain.
Thank
Bye.
Bye.
Gary, I was just going to ask you one more question, actually, which is if anyone did bring in any sort of tax increase, as Mark made the point that it's probably going to be an increase on the transfer tax. So instead of 8%, they'll pay 16%. Do you think anybody will be put off by that, or do you think that the market will just continue to grow as it is?
No, I think the market will continue to grow. Honestly, Chris, I've seen it this year, and it's astounded me how strong the market is. Number one, the prices are still increasing since last August at a steady rate, especially in this area. I think across Spain, especially than the Costas. I just don't think it'll have a massive effect. I speak to my family in the UK, and there is so much discontentment in the UK with what we've discussed there and the weather and various other things that I cannot see it. I really can't. I just feel it will move forward. I think this is the tiny little blip where, as I say, the media have blown it out of all proportion, and I just think it will carry on. Personally,
Paco, here's an interesting question for you. It's not illegal, but literally just came to my head before we wrap this up. What do the Spanish press take on what Sanchez has said? I mean, clearly there must have been some Spanish press that picked up on this, both locally and sort of centrally.
Well, yeah, but this was only one in 10
12 points or something.
Yeah, 10 measures, increasing the number of social housing available, tax benefits for landlords who put up their property for rental with minimum rental levels, and so, and this was actually in the Prime Minister's speech. This thing about the increase of tax for non-EU buyers, it was the very last point.
Right. That's how important it is.
Yeah. So in Spain, the reception of this news is that there is concern about how that will impact the tourist industry. So there have been, some short reviews in news on TV of local people brooding about how that could affect the influx of foreigners, and there has been criticism about the lack of certainty in the way he made the announcement, because that begs too many questions, and that's no good for the economy in general, because Spain is breaking records of tourist influx annually, over 90 million last year. And what we should not forget is that tourism accounts for 13% of the gross domestic product in Spain. And not only that, if you add up the real estate development part of the whole chunk, we're talking about a serious part of the Spanish economy. So you cannot derail it as easily. And we haven't touched about a couple of additional things that might bring this to nothing, which is that in the past, there were also some tax measures aimed at discriminating non-EU citizens, like the gift tax and inheritance tax. So that in principle, they were only available to EU citizens. And that was completely repealed by the EU Court of Justice. Because
I was going to mention that actually. With the whole EU situation. So
not only EU citizens cannot be discriminated against, but just anyone. I mean, you cannot put on a different footing to someone who comes along from a different country on purely those grounds alone. And VAT, if he wished to change the VAT, because if it was an off-plan purchase, if it is off-plan, then that's VAT as opposed to transfer tax. But there are strict EU regulations about tax levels on housing. So he could not just all of a sudden, out of the blue, come up with a funny domestic regulation about VAT in Spain. So there is a number of regulatory restrictions on top of the minority position of the ruling party, how long it will take, because what I know for sure is that he will not resort to one of these immediate decrees to pass the tax, because whenever he has done that, they were not upheld at Parliament, and that's a very big embarrassment, like the one he had. So
I mean, he's gonna, given that there's a number of opposition parties that have already come out and spoken against it, it's very, very, as I said, it's very unlikely to even get through his own parliament, I think, let alone the opposition. So he's going to struggle in lots of ways. But good. All right. Well, look, unless there's any further questions from anyone or further comments from anyone, I think we've covered that really well. In the sense that no one panic, knee-jerk decision, crack on as usual, make your sales as usual, and enjoy the Spanish lifestyle. I think that's where we're coming from. Yeah, guys, thank you very much for joining us, Mark. Thank you for joining us, and Gary, Paco, and Simona, as always, thank you very much for joining us.